You're an actor. You're a musician.
Yeah.
Man of many talents.
Well,
Where did it all start for you?
oh, well, music has always been my number one, passion since I was since as far back as I can remember. So for me, I was obsessed with music at a very, very young age, and that was it. It was all I ever wanted to do, and it came easy for me somehow. So I just that was that was my obsession. Still is.
Okay, and when did you pick up a guitar first and foremost?
I first picked up a guitar when I was about 15. I played like in school. I played the violin for a few years, and that was sort of my first time ever playing anything. And then I wanted to play drums, and I saved up to get a drum set. I had this drum set, and a couple kids from my school, we would start jamming together terribly. Probably, I'm sure we were awful. But I wasn't a great drummer, and then I wanted to like write songs and play guitar, and so I just started fumbling with that, and yeah, and then that was it. I just gave up drums and just stuck with guitar, and I've been here ever since.
And do you pinpoint certain influences along the way that really shaped you as a musician?
Oh yeah, I mean, just everything I ever heard in music from a real little age, just listening to the radio constantly. In Los Angeles where I grew up, there was like AM radio, and there was all the 70 singles that were on, and then of course getting older, getting into hard rock and metal and whatnot. I was just obsessed with I mean, anything from Aerosmith to Kiss. Kiss was like my big obsession as a kid. Probably that was like the starting point for me going, I want to be a rock star. I want to be in a band, I got to be in a band kind of thing. And but like most of the hard rock that was around in the 70s, Kiss, Aerosmith, Black Sabbath, I would just sit in my room. I was that kid that sat in his room with headphones on and just never left.
Sure.
I was upset. Yeah. So.
And you end up, I'm sure I've read that you actually were born in New York. Is that correct?
No, I was actually born in Los Angeles. My parents are from New York, and
right.
my family's from New York, and we wound up moving to New York when I was a teenager. But
right.
I grew up originally in LA for like the first probably 14 or 15 years of my life, with many visits to New York.
When you get to New York, there's a connection to, I believe, a certain band called Anthrax. Is that correct?
Yep. I was going to school. I was going to high school with a bunch of guys from the Bronx, and I had a band. I joined a band up there called Smokescreen that was out of this area called Co-op City in the North Bronx, and they were kind of a big local band in that area. And there was a bar that we used to play at in the Bronx, and 4 blocks away, Charlie Benanti and Frank Bella lived. They were their uncle and nephew, so they grew up in the same house together, and they would come down to the bar because it was so close to their house. And so we were, of course, a local band. I think just playing covers really, and a couple of originals, and they would walk in these big rock stars. It was probably like 1985, and that's where I met those guys, and then we've just we've been close, friends and family ever since.
What was that music scene in New York like? In the mid to late 80s for you?
It was really exciting because it was so diverse. New York in the 80s, there was so many things that were happening on the streets of New York City that weren't happening anywhere else in the world. Like you would go to bed on a Friday night, and then you'd wake up Monday, and there's a brand new form of music that was invented over the weekend. That's what it felt like. We would walk home from school sometimes, and there'd be kids scratching records and rapping over it and dancing on big giant cardboard boxes in the middle of the street. and you were like, what is this? You know, and I'm always fascinated by new sounds and new music. You know, I'm just insatiable. And so me and my friends were like, I don't even know if I like it. I don't know what it is. And so people would bring in new music, homemade music, into school or at the park or on the corner, and you would just go, what am I listening to? Like I'm listening to something that didn't exist a few days ago or a week ago. This is the first time I've ever heard this kind of music. And it would happen all the time in the 80s in New York. It was amazing.
And I guess that would have been a very primitive version of file sharing back then, with everyone trading their music to get everyone to listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah, you would have a tape of I remember when the first Metallica, when Kill 'Em All came out, there was already like tapes being traded with the early Metallica stuff, and then like when Kill 'Em All came out, my guitar player Eddie gave me a cassette copy, and I went home and made my own cassette copy, which is really bad and illegal, but I did it anyway. So I had mine, and then I would find another band on a cassette that someone gave me, like some Iron Maiden B-sides, and I would tape that for him, and then that's just how we all, you know, helped each other, you know, accumulate a lot of music.
I remember doing it. We're only probably about 5 years apart, you and I, so I can remember. We file shared in the 80s, but we also bought our shit, so we're allowed to do it.
Yeah, I know, right? Screw them.
Yeah, fuck them.
I spent every cent I've ever owned on records, so I don't feel guilty. I still do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, neither do I. My dad was he was in the army, and he used to have discos for the kids, and every second week we'd go buy our 45s and pick a record. So fuck them. I bought it.
Exactly. Fuck them. Dude, after school, I would go right to any record store in the village. There was one in the East Village called St. Mark's Sounds, which is closed now, unfortunately. But I'd rather be there than anywhere in the world, because you can get any record you wanted, and you leave with like 12 records, 8 of which you didn't anticipate buying or didn't even know existed. And you'd find they were all like $1.50, $2, $3, 50 cents. You know, killer shit.
Tell me an album that you walked in and just bought by looking at the cover, and it became one of your favorite albums.
Well, when I was... You mean like I didn't know anything about the band?
No, you just went, I'm just going to buy it because of the cover.
Wow. I'm trying to think. I know there was a record when I was like 16 or 17. I was really into punk and garage rock and stuff like that, and hardcore. I was just wanted to get as many bands of those genres as I could, and I used to walk into Sounds, and a guy who worked behind the counter was named Binky Phillips, and he was in a band out of New York called the Planets, who used to play with Kiss back in the early 70s. Remember? They were, if you look up any like Kiss documentary, they always mention the Planets as like already existing. And it was like the Dolls, the Planets, and then Kiss came later. And Binky, I don't know if he worked there. And he would always tell me what bands to buy. And I remember he was playing, being a Kiss diehard, he was playing some punk band, and they were really sloppy, but they were fun and funny. And I always like funny bands. And they did a cover of Black Diamond that was kind of all over the place, but I thought it was hilarious that a punk band would do that. And I go, who is this? And he goes, it's the Replacements. And I go, oh, this is kind of cool. And he flipped the side over, and a lot of the songs were really, really well written. And I remember he bought that, or he told me to buy that record. It just came out. It was called Let It Be. And I bought it, and I really loved it. But when I was younger, dude, like when I was 7 or 8 years old, looking at the cover of Kiss Alive was everything.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. I was like, I just felt so much power off that cover, and reading the liner notes inside and all their little notes that they wrote to their fans. And Ace Frehley said he wasn't comfortable with the gravity on my planet and all that. I just completely bought into it. So that one I bought I knew that they were going to be great. You know, that and Destroyer, just the covers, I knew this band was going to be incredible. Oh, and Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden too. Yeah, that Killers, seeing Killers in the record store, I was like, this is going to be an incredible band. Yep.
First album I ever bought for the cover only was Dress to Kill.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
That's a great record.
Like I was 3. So I think about it now as a father and go, that was really inappropriate music for a 3-year-old, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the references flew over your head at the time at 3. I didn't know any. I didn't, I mean, all the dirty songs that Kiss wrote, like on the first record, like Nothing to Lose. I had no idea what that was about until I was like 32. And I was singing along with it. I was like, oh, no way. That's what he's talking about? That's hilarious.
That's great. So from New York, you move more into the acting side of life.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me how it all comes full circle. What leads you back to really back to Vegas, and really diving into music more than acting? What was that change for you?
Well, I kind of, I moved from New York to California in the late 80s, early 90s, dropped out of a college called Queens College just because I wanted to study music. And LA had a really good school there where the guys in Toto studied.
Mm-hmm.
And I met with the guy who ran he was an old hippie guy. And I said, well, he was super cool. He just goes, come here, I'll teach you music. You're a cool guy. And I was like, thank you. So I moved to California and I was studying and I was auditioning for bands, and I got into an acting school just for fun, just as something to do on the weekend. And I went and got there, and then I was just doing acting as a hobby, nothing more. And, it happens a lot in Los Angeles where you're doing something else that you don't necessarily want to be doing, but it's just you're doing it for fun. And then someone who works in that industry goes, hey, you want a job? And you just go, all right. And then I went that route, and music became my hobby and acting became my career, which is not what I intended at all, but I went with whoever wanted me first. Right.
Yeah.
And then, I learned a lot and I had a good time in acting, but I always was trying to figure out a way to do both. And at a certain point, I found myself in Vancouver, Canada, doing a television series. And I met this guy named Todd Kearns,
mm-hmm.
who's a very tall Canadian. And and he was working he was recording in a studio called Little Mountain, which was a famous studio in Vancouver, and I was working for the show I was on, providing music for it. And we ran into each other a bunch of times and said hello and goodbye, and then over the years we stayed in touch. And when I wanted to put acting to bed finally, and I said, this is my time, I need to focus my energy on music, which was my initial intention. I called Todd because I stayed friends with him for decades, and he was in Vegas. And I said, what do you think about Las Vegas for me? And he goes, oh, bro, it's home for me, man. I don't want to live anywhere else. And I can get you a gig here. You can come and join my band. So I went, all right, sounds like a plan. So I moved here to Vegas, and then that was it. So it's all because of Todd.
It's all his fault.
All his fault. He's the one to blame.
Yep. And so you've played, you did the Sinners and Original Sin. You probably jumped in and out of that a little bit as well.
Yeah.
The revolving doors there. And then we come to Bruce Kulick Band, which features that tall Canadian and another mildly tall Canadian.
Yes, he's also quite tall too.
Yeah, and a tall New York guy.
Yep.
So how did that feel for you? Like, even though you grew up in 70s Kiss, 80s Kiss is still really great. To come around with, a guy that a lot of people don't realize how much he actually shaped those 80s songs. Like, how did that feel?
Well, first off, it was just so great to be able to play in a band with Todd and Fitz, because we're such friends and we love playing together. Just me and Fitzy as a rhythm section, and then Todd fronting. We in any shape and form, it's such a thrill for all of us. But Bruce is someone I've known for a long time and have loved forever, and just to be able to the four of us to be in a band together. We work so well together. we're such good friends, and we love the music we're making. And I got to be honest with you, you know, in the '80s in New York City, I was not, even though Kiss was when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Kiss, and I always kept tabs on them. You know, a video would come out on MTV, and I go, oh, cool, that's a great song, you know. But I stopped buying their records.
Yeah.
Just because I was into other things. I was listening to, you know, hardcore music and a lot of punk and a lot of thrash metal and all that, whatever was new, you know, and a lot of hip hop. And so I was just sort of, Kiss was just kind of off my radar, but I always kept tabs on the hit singles, and they always sounded great. And I probably saw them a couple of times in the '80s, and I thought, you know, they were incredible live. They still were. And I mean, Lick It Up was an amazing record, but I kind of didn't know a lot of the deep cuts. So when we put the set lists together, and I would go and learn all that stuff from Asylum and Animalize, I was like, Jesus, like these songs are insane. Like some of the stuff was super fast and really heavy, and Gene was playing and singing like, I mean, if not as good as his old self, as you know, maybe even better in some places. His vocals were just so powerful and huge and screaming, and I was like, what did I miss out on? You know, I totally, I completely missed the boat, and I should have been collecting the records. But I know all their material now, all through the '80s and the '90s, and I just have a complete respect and a kind of obsession with it now, because it was just great stuff. It just wasn't on my radar at the time.
Yeah. And you've done a couple of cruises. So how does it feel knowing that, you know that I think Todd told me that Paul watched one of the shows, and I don't know if Gene has, but how does it feel to know that they're sort of within earshot? What sort of feedback have you got from?
It was insane. You know, as a diehard fan, like, you know, to actually know that Paul stood there, not even like from his room upstairs, like he stood at the monitor board and watched us, was nuts. It was kind of a little too much for me to absorb. And then I finally went and saw him watching The Darkness one night at the pool, and I said, and everybody was, you know, I was with Fitz, so I felt a little more comfortable because Fitz knows him. And I said, hi, Paul, my name is Zach, and he was cordial. And then I said, I play in Bruce's band. And he looked at me and he goes, oh, you're the guy that does all the Gene stuff. And I was like, he knows me.
That's awesome.
That was, you know, the 7-year-old in me was really thrilled. And then Gene was in his room, which was right above, Eric's room was right above the stage, and Gene's was like down the hall. So they heard the whole set. And Fitz plays with Gene. So Fitz told me that Gene was incredibly impressed by our band.
That's great.
Yeah, it was a thrill, man. I mean, you know, I'm a kid still inside. You know, I look at Kiss and I see Gene or I see Paul and I go, oh, hey, Gene, hey, Paul, what's going on? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're just a couple of guys. But the little guy in me is just sitting there going, Jesus, Gene and Paul knew who I am.
Yeah, it's a moment.
Yeah, big time. Big time.
We get to a couple of, still around the same time, you start playing with Corey. How do you get involved with Corey Taylor?
Well, I've known Corey for probably over 20 years. I've known Corey for probably over 20 years, and we I met him through Scott Ian, who I play with and I've been friends with for 30 years now. And we just always, you know, we've known each other a long time, and we've always been friends, and we've always stayed in touch. And then he wanted to do a cover. He wanted to do like a couple of cover shows, and his bass player Jason Christopher is a friend of mine as well. And they both thought of me for doing a couple of cover gigs. And I was like, of course, I'd love to do that, you know. And he made a set list, and all the songs were super cool, and he booked about half a dozen shows or more. And we went out and just killed it. And it was we had a real vibe. It was, you know, we weren't playing any original songs, but we had a real vibe to it. And his fans seemed to really love it. And then he wanted to put a solo record together that he's been working on, you know, on and off over the last however many years. And he called me and said, you know, I want to do a solo record. I want you to be in the band. It's going to be, this amount of commitment time. And are you interested? And I go, of course I'm interested. I'd love to. He goes, great. And then that was it. From that moment on, he would be on tour with Slipknot and be sending us demos from the bus. Him playing acoustically. Okay, this is this song. This is this song. And then me and the other guys, we just start getting our parts together. And then he said, okay, we're going to record the record here. And then of course, pandemic hit, and everything changed. He was off tour and he had to get off the road as everyone else did. And now we're all stuck at home. And he just said, well, instead of doing the album as I originally scheduled it next year, why don't we just do it right now? Because we're all home. And I said, sure. So the other guys flew in from where they live, and we just did the record here in Vegas.
Okay. Did you go into the Hideout or a different studio?
Yeah, we were in the Hideout.
Right.
Yeah, it was great. We recorded the whole thing basically live. We just overdubbed guitar solos and vocals, but even the solos were, only a couple takes. Corey's insanely quick with his vocals. He'll just go in and do 2 takes of something, and then that's it. And he nails it. So it was a real quick record. We did, I think, 24 songs in like a month.
And how many is he going to put on the album? How much is the finished product?
I think the record has 13 songs on it, the actual album, but there's a bunch of B-sides that we've done for overseas release and singles and things like that. And then we did an acoustic version of every single song that's on the record.
Wow. So
we can do a whole acoustic release of every song that's on the record, like the CMFT record acoustic, which is really fantastic. Fun.
I think we're in that final week before release. How does it feel for you to be a part of something that's a week away?
Well, it's great. It's boy, how does it feel? 1 week from now, and the album's coming out. It's exciting because the album is. We're all so proud of it. It's a real great record, and it shows every kind of facet of Corey's musicality. That he can pretty much do anything in any genre of rock, and there's a little bit of everything on it. It's very multidimensional. So I'm excited for people to hear it, because I don't know the singles that we released are so different from each other. So I don't know what people are expecting, but expect the unexpected, I guess is the only thing I can say.
Yeah. As a music fan, I said this to my wife the other day, it's going to piss a lot of people off.
Yeah.
Because there are people that only know Corey Taylor Slipknot. There are people that only know Corey Taylor Stone Sour. They probably haven't followed the fact that he can stand there and do Purple Rain by Prince.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't understand that he's probably one of the most versatile, not just singers, but musicians. So,
hands down.
Yeah, if you take I think there's 4 songs released now, because there was another one done the other day.
Yep.
They're also different, but they're also similar. And maybe if people take the blinders off, they'll actually see a new side of Corey, and especially blending with the players like yourself on the record that also have their own styles. Mm-hmm. It's like this. It's almost like this big melting pot of really cool shit so far.
Thank you. I mean, that's everything I could ever hope for. That people just look at it as music, and not so much like, well, it doesn't sound enough like Slipknot from here. It doesn't sound enough like Stone Sour. They just look at it as just killer music, and it comes straight from him. It's, you're either, I guess, a fan of Corey as a musician, or you're just a fan of when he does this kind of stuff or this kind of stuff. And I kind of understand that, because I was fans of, when Kiss did things that were outside of their realm, or Rush. I used to be a huge Rush fan, and when they would go down some kind of like ultravoxy kind of songs, I went, oh, really? But I was, I realized later when I got older and smarter, and I wasn't such a snob, I went, that's who they are. They just want to explore different musical sides of themselves. And Corey's one of those guys that really doesn't look at music as there's no prejudice in his music tastes, nor with anybody else in this band. We all grew up on the same shit. We all grew up loving and worshiping the same stuff. We can go from a Bad Brains song to George Michael to Kiss to Stevie Wonder, to Squeeze to SOD in a shot. All of us in a room together, we could just start playing. We all have pretty much the same musical tastes, and we have so much variety and eclecticism in our record collections. That's what makes it so exciting, because we're all symbiotic that way.
And beyond the music, I don't think people realize this. Like, I've been lucky to only been around Corey a handful of times, so I've shot him a couple of times at shows and been around him in Vegas and here in Australia. I don't think they realise what a music fan he actually is. Like, what a diehard fan of music. He doesn't pick a genre. He is. I think you spoke about the fact that when you lived in New York, there'd be a new genre every week. I think this album might just be that new genre.
Oh, that's sweet of you to say that. Thank you.
Like you think about the different songs so far. Like, people, I'm going to be honest. Like, I read when the first single came out, there was some shit flying around, and I was just like, "This is the greatest song I've ever heard." It's because he's taking the piss out of himself.
Totally, 100%.
And if people actually stopped and actually took that on board,
100%.
Yeah, literally a conversation. It was a conversation with himself.
Exactly. He is the least rock star you'll ever meet in your life. There's zero ego with him, zero elitism. He is so grounded and so down to earth, and like you said, is a fan, just like all of us. He knows who he is and is himself, and he's always authentically him. So if you don't know he's a rock star, you never know that he was Corey Taylor. Just there's no indication that he comes in a room and he's better than you ever.
So if there's one song, like, while they're Corey songs, there was a bunch of you that all put your pieces together to make it a puzzle. If I'm going to grab this on Friday when it comes out, and I'm going to go, okay, where's Zach? What's that one song where you go, I fucking nailed that?
I don't know if I'll ever say that in my life, but I'm really proud of the guitar work that I did on this record, and Tooch as well. Tooch just completely lit a fire under me and forced me basically to just dig in deeper. So he's also to blame, Yeah. If I've done anything good on the record, it was Tooch's fault. But there's a solo that I'm particularly proud of on the song. There's a song called Halfway Down, and when we were rehearsing it, and I was like playing it, I was like, this is kind of a cool solo. Like, not to, I don't puff myself up ever, but I was sitting there going, if I was like sitting as a kid learning guitar and that was on a record, I'd be like, that's pretty neat. That solo I'm very proud of, and another song called Silverfish that's just a real gorgeous, moody, incredibly beautiful ballad, and I do this outro solo on that, and I was like, it's got some nice moments in it. Probably those two, I would think.
And is there a song on the album that you think that people will identify the most with, and again, maybe another song on there that might just piss people off?
Well, dude, I would imagine someone's going to get pissed off about something. Right? Because it's like, Corey's not playing it safe, and when you don't play it safe, right, someone's going to get upset. Geez, I'm trying to think what would be the most potentially offensive. Hang on a second. I got to go look at the. I got to go look at the sequencing and see which one.
Coming from 4, it could be any.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see what we got. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know how his fans are about his ballads. His ballads are really beautiful. But he has this ballad called "Home" it's just him and a piano and his voice that he wrote for his wife. And then I don't know if people will be pissed off about it. I think all his fans who truly love his music will really adore it because it shows a side of him that's very personal. Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. I can't imagine anyone like listening to it going, "Oh, I'm offended. I'm upset." I think they would just not expect that. Maybe.
Right. Okay.
Be pleasantly surprised.
Cool. And now you're off to LA, I take it, in a little while to go and do the release show at the Forum.
Yeah, October 2nd.
Like that's a big deal. Like while it's a very different way of playing the LA Forum, you're still playing the LA Forum.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I personally, for me, being a kid originally from LA, I saw my very first concert at the LA Forum in 1979, and then I saw Van Halen there in 80, 81, and 82 probably, but certainly at least 2 shows there. And I saw, I mean, that was the Valhalla of where to go see concerts in Los Angeles in the 70s and 80s. So, or maybe, I was in New York about 82, so I guess I didn't see Van Halen there that year. But yeah, it was it was when it was announced that we were going to do it, I just went, oh my God, like, am I worthy? Like I'm going to be standing on a stage where Van Halen was, and I was like, so it's yeah, I'm very excited about it. Very excited.
Excellent. All right, man. Yeah. We'll leave it at that. Anything else you want to say to the people out there?
Just, I've never been to Australia, so I'm very excited about when pandemic's over and everybody's able to travel again and perform, to go to visit, because it's always number 1 on my list of places to go. So I just wanted to say hi to everybody, all the Aussies, and Aussie, oi, oi, oi. And just thank you for listening, and I hope you dig the record, because we're all really, really proud of it, and just thanks. Okay, brother, man, it's great talking with you.
Thanks, man. Have a good day.
You too, dude.
All right, bye.